non-financial, although we have not financially established our system, keeps us somewhat as the OPA within the executive parameters of the classified merit system. But I would not, and Senator, I apologize. If you had asked me today, is this agency a line agency, I'd say we're in the executive, but not a line agency. The line agencies are those under the purview of the governor. But we are within the executive parameters.
And for some reason, in your Attorney General opinion dated June 15 of last year, you found yourself to be a line agency, and that whether the Office of the Attorney General is a line agency for which the certification pay is provided in 4 GCA 6235 is applicable to qualified personnel in the Attorney General's office, your response was yes.
Again, Senator, with regard to the merit system and classifications and base pay requirements of various positions that are adopted by the legislature, yes. Competitive Wage Act, we are not independent from that like an autonomous agency. So when I say that we are within the line agency parameters, but not under the governor's operational control, we do follow many of the line agency requirements.
So yes. Did you implement 6235?
6208, the attorney salary scale?
No, the 6235, the 4 GCA 6235 as it relates to
the certification pay.
Certification pay. Did you?
Yes, we did under the statute as it was enacted at that time. There is a revision to the certification pay statute. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
How did we interpret the prior statute and our implementation of that? And we did have a disagreement with the Department of Administration's interpretation, and we followed certainly my interpretation of that, which has since been, the statute's been revised, and we're following the current statute now.
And is that in your listing for your auditor people? Do you have anybody with certification?
Yes, we have one individual, and Senator, that is currently a matter that we are discussing with the Department of Administration,
has it been
resolved? It is still an active issue with DOA. I'm discussing this with Christine, and we're hoping to resolve that very, very soon.
Resolved how?
The disagreement between DOA's interpretation and our interpretation.
What is DOA's interpretation?
DOA's interpretation under the new statute is there is only one certification pay added to the non-base pay.
And
our prior interpretation under the prior statute was we allowed 2 certification credits to the non-base pay. The statute has now changed. And we had a disagreement with DOA, and we're about ready to resolve that. If you're asking, has it been adjusted in the staffing pattern? No, it has yet to be adjusted.
Is that person receiving the adjustment?
I'm sorry, say that?
Is that person receiving the adjustment?
Not yet. It is still an active, it's ongoing and active with DOA.
And when you do, how do you figure you can do a double?
Not under the current statute, Senator.
Okay.
The current statute's clear. There's no ambiguity in the current statute. There was an ambiguity prior to the current statute.
And you read it, or an accounting supervisor or whatever, and they're making $70,000, and she applies to get a CPA or a CFA, and gets the 15%, it's multiplied against the $70,000 that she's receiving.
As a single certification,
correct,
non-base, not as previously. We saw the ambiguity, and Senator, if I could indicate that the prior statute was subject to 2 interpretations, and we took the dual. I think what I was very interested in watching the OPA's discussion is that the Competitive Wage Act and its impact on these types of positions of auditors and accountants, it's very low. We can't compete with the autonomous agencies. They pay their unclassified accountants, auditors a huge amount of money. And in the classified service under the Department of Administration, CWA, it's very difficult to attract. It's almost as difficult to attract a senior attorney for. And so when the prior statute was in place, there was an ambiguity in the language. We implemented 2 certification non-base pays. The statute was amended. It is clear now. It is 1. And every year when you get recertified.
If I can finish my question. Okay. The senior person is getting $70,000, gets a CFA. Okay? So she gets a 15% increase. She gets it against the $70,000 that she is currently receiving.
Her base pay.
Her base pay. You hire a new auditor and we give it to you at a 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. And she comes in at $40,000. Mm-hmm. She gets her CFA. Mm-hmm. She gets it multiplied against her $40,000. Okay. And until she retires 30 years from now, your interpretation is that this adjustment she receives every year for the next 30 years on top of her base pay.
That would not be my answer to you. I don't know exactly how you're reading that opinion, but it is the multiplying factor is a non-base pay multiplier. You could, as a legislature, eliminate that completely tomorrow. You only get $40,000, and the person has to continue with certification and recertification in order to maintain that. That would be my position.
And your attorneys need to keep their certification.
Yes.
By doing their CLEs all year. Do they get a adjustment? No. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And when I fought this certification thing, I had the same issue with them. The attorneys don't get it. Mm-hmm. And when our teachers come back with their masters and they come back with their doctorates, there isn't an automatic certification. No. And then the interpretation that it's not a one-time bonus to say, thank you for going off and getting your certification, we'll give you $15,000. They're getting a $15,000 bonus every year until they leave government service.
They have to maintain their certification.
I understand.
So I don't think we disagree on that.
I understand. Okay. But I'm just saying, is it as rigorous as the 15 hours that we have to put in to keep our certification? I'm
not familiar with the certification requirements for CPAs and accountants.
Do you think it should be $15,000 a year for the 30 years that they're in government service?
Senator, I don't have right now an opinion with regard to the accounting and auditor certification pay. I do, if you ask me an opinion about the attorneys, I might. But the certification pay has been established by this legislature as a 1. You don't get all 3, you get 1, and you have to come back and be recertified in order to maintain that for the rest of your career. If you don't, you lose it.
And did your opinion have any message or caveat to the legislature that be aware of this, that it's discriminatory against the attorneys in my office? It's discriminatory against teachers who go off and get their master's or their PhD. And
certification pay is tricky. So is a 40% increase in law enforcement officer pay. All these extra benefits that we add to these various kinds of positions do cause a domino effect. You're right, Senator. What about the attorneys? What about the teachers? Law enforcement pay of 40%, then what about the nurses and what about everybody? Every time we as lawmakers, we try to address the pay issue of our employees, and there's a lot of pressure on that. It has a domino effect.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the legislature can repeal that going forward, and they don't get that.
Exactly. I totally agree.
The other thing that I was concerned about, and I complained about when I was in our previous position at the court with the CWA and the Hay study. I think yesterday the OPA was saying that the average increase for her auditors was $2,000, but her ASO managed a $4,000 increase under the CWA. And my complaint when I was at the court was that the HR people that were schmoozing the Hay people got the huge increases. And I hated the fact that my attorneys were making less than my HR staff. And I note that though you say that at the heart of the AGO, I see a number of people in your administrative staff that make more than attorneys. How is that possible? What possible qualifications could they have? What education and certification could they possibly have that would give them more than attorneys?
Well, Senator, first of all, the senior attorneys are making quite a bit more than a normal classified employee. If the employees in our administrative division who are unclassified or classified are making more than some attorneys 1, 2, or 3, and Senator, that's because of longevity and their years of experience in the government of Guam and the hard years of going up step by step by step. The attorney, the younger attorney level under CWA is very attractive. The senior attorney pay under CWA is not attractive. My agency does have, predominantly in the litigation division and solicitor division, attorneys who are in the $80,000 to the $90,000 range. I don't know too many in my administrative division other than 1 or 2 that are at that level. Senator, again, an attorney can go off and get a JD and get admitted to a bar and start practicing, a young attorney of 5 years. That attorney is probably not going to make as much as a classified employee that has been in government service for 18, 20, or 25 years, just by the longevity and the increments.
So your program coordinators have 18 or 20 years in government service?
Which program coordinator?
If you look without mentioning names, just position 2013.
Okay. In administration?
Yep. Makes more than a couple of your attorneys in your litigation division.
She definitely does make more than our younger attorneys, 1, 2, possibly even 3, because she has had longevity. She has been there for 18, 20 years. She was there when I came into the office of the Attorney General. Is that correct, Jackie? She has at least 20 years in government service, I think. It's interesting, you mentioned this. I was talking to the Judiciary Chief Justice that it's going to come to a point where some of the government attorneys are going to start making, at the Judiciary, are going to start be making more than some of the judges just by the longevity of their government time and service.
You asked for $300,000 in contractual services. What's that for?
Okay. Jackie, I want to be able to run down the contractual. Thank you, Senator.
Good morning. We are budgeting about $70,000 total for some federally litigated cases. $50,000 of that would be for the Lazon case and $20,000 for the plebiscite case. The CJIS Integration Cost Sharing Initiative with the judiciary, that's almost $120,000 that we're projecting. And JustWare software for our prosecution system.
Your Apostle system, who's that contracted with?
I'm sorry?
Apostle?
Yes, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Who's the contracted vendor on that one?
Currently, it is HPE, and they just changed their name, and I'm sorry, Speaker, I do not have that off the top of my head, but they are under a contract that was competitively let. I believe they're in their second of potentially 3 years, or 3 of potentially 4 under the contract provisions.
You have it out on bid, or?
It was an RFP that was issued prior to my coming into the division, so we will, I believe we have 1 term left, and after that, of course, it'll need to be competitively bid through the RFP process.
Your agency narrative also states that you've temporarily discontinued the use of the external vendors for evaluation.
Yes.
What is the eventual remedy?
I'm sorry?
You're going to get a new system?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it's been discussed. As far as I can tell in my review of previous narratives that were submitted, it's been put in there for several years. The process to get a new case management system that complies with federal requirements most often is 8 to 10 years. There's a selection process. You're in consultation with the Office of Child Support Enforcement. You have to do a feasibility study and a cost-benefits analysis. You have to get approval. It's a very long process. We were at least at year 6 or 7, I believe, and we had previously employed 2 private contractors to assist in developing the cost benefits and feasibility, all in consultation, of course, with our grantors. The reason why we've taken a break from that, which again we did with the consultation and approval of the federal office, was because the prices for these systems range. I mean, I can't give any specific state, of course, that's either in process, but I can tell you it's between $50 to over $100 million. It's a lot of money. And that's because you have to meet these minimum requirements for federal certification to be able to do parent locator services and bank checks and other information that's available to child support offices and be able to exchange information and meet minimum requirements. So over the course of fiscal year 2017, there had been a lot of discussions about what we could possibly do to pay less to get a system that works. And we took a step back. We consulted with our grantors. We said we need to take a step back because the road that we're going down is a very, very expensive road. Is there a possibility that we could look into joint multi-jurisdictional procurement? Is there a possibility we could look at an existing federal system where it would cost less to adapt that to what we need? The interesting predicament of Guam is we have to meet all of the same federal requirements for a case management system. We have a caseload of maybe 7,000 cases. States out there with a caseload of 200,000 cases have to meet the same requirements. So it's not always a matter of the cost increases because you have 50 county offices and you're getting hardware for each person in those offices. It's meeting these minimum requirements for how the system must be designed. So we took a step back. We discontinued the services per our contractual terms of the 2 other contractors that were helping us to design this process. And we're actually looking at getting back into that and submitting our federal reports and looking at the costs so that we can get back on the train to getting a new system. In the meantime, we have to maintain this very old system, and that's what costs a lot of money. If you're going to make a production change, if there's a new federal requirement that comes out, for example, to have a certain type of electronic transmission for employers, and we need to make that change, the cost for that is much more than if we could just go to the store, buy a new program off the shelf, and run it in our current software. So that's what those costs were about.
The General mentioned that this last year you guys collected 10.8 and were able to distribute 10.1.
Yes.
How is it possible that there's a $700,000 difference there? And is that from like old child support orders that I signed when I was there 20 years ago that you guys can't find, or is this?
Well, that could, if we're collecting from orders where, you know, the kids were not yet 18, or if the children are in school until the age of their 19, it could be a very, very old order. But what that represents is in the parameter of a calendar year or a fiscal year. We do our reports fiscal year, but for the purpose of the annual report is calendar year. That's money that came in during that calendar year and money that went out. As an example, if we receive money from a tax offset, it doesn't just immediately, let me back up. If we receive a regular court-ordered child support payment, for example, that money comes in and it goes out. There's a $300 obligation, process it, identify who it came from, who it's supposed to go, and that goes out. So we get that done in a day or 2 days. If we receive a tax offset, we need to go back. We hold that. There may be claims by joint filers that might hold the process. We need to review the file because we don't want to have the money go out until we're absolutely certain that the amount that was collected covers amounts that were actually owed. There might have been payments in the meantime that reduced the amount of arrears, as an example. So there are fluctuations over time about when money from non-regular ordered payments come in and when they go out. We have a very large undistributed collection amount that represents decades where we could not, for whatever reason, distribute the payments. That needs to be brought down. But the difference between the 10.8 and the 10.1 is not reflective of the past. It's reflective of what's in this year as the deadline goes for our time period to review tax offsets and get them distributed. If we have put a case on hold because we need to verify certain amounts that need to go out, if we've put a case on hold because we want to verify an overpayment perhaps, that number fluctuates over time.
You have currently about 25 positions that are vacant, including the positions that you have filled just recently. Do you really realistically believe that you'll be able to fill all of those vacancies in the year that you want them budgeted for?
Yes, Senator. In fact, it's 17. If you're looking back to the March, we've actually filled some of the vacancies. Of the 17 remaining vacancies, 6 of those are the senior attorneys. One of those 6 will be filled by an attorney 1. Fred Nishihira is looking to bring an attorney over to help with the collections and restitution on island. So there's 5 senior attorneys. Unless we get some headhunter to find us and get us some attorneys in, those are going to probably be vacant into 18. The rest of the positions are 5 of them are with Rebecca. They are actively recruiting. She's got ongoing interviews. We've actually offered of the 17 one of the clerk positions at prosecution, and she's been drug tested. She just needs to start, but we show it as a vacancy because they haven't started. So Mr. Uggan and his HR group has just been doing a fantastic job. I really believe that the non-support staff, and Tony, chime in if you would like to, will be filled by this quarter. Some of it, senators, is underfilling, and what I want to be able to say is part of the reason why our budget dropped from March to today is that our office, in addition to the attorneys, we have difficult to recruit positions: legal secretaries, legal clerks, 1s and 2s. We interview for legal secretaries and we offer them the job, and then their bosses in the private sector just give them a little bit more and then they stay. So legal secretaries and legal clerks are hard to fill, and Tony can verify that. So what we've done, and I've said to HR, look, if you can't get a legal secretary, then get a word processing secretary, and we will train that WPS to be a legal secretary. So we've just hired one for litigation division because we WPs. So the reduction as we go into 18, that March staffing pattern, it keeps going down. because we are recruiting less difficult positions into 18. The attorney, senior lawyers, they get barred. We are attorney ones, but in the 17 staffing pattern, they may have shown as 2s or 3s or even 4s, but we've just taken those attorney positions, senior law clerks. So that reflects some of the differences to where we are from March to today. And yes, Senator, aside from the senior attorneys, I am very optimistic that everyone takes the offer we give them, we'll fill those positions by September 30th.
Okay, because I mean, it just seems like it's about a $1.6 million amount for all the positions. Yeah. And it just seems like it's like a slush fund for you to be able to transfer. Yeah.
I'm not asking for a carryover of the lapses.
No, yeah, but how much have you transferred this year? I keep getting.
Well, we can't transfer 15, 16, or 17. I agree with the Department of Administration. There's nothing to carry over if there's no cash. So I totally understand the Director of Administration's position. So we come to the legislature. There will be lapses, Senator, absolutely, because in the last 3 quarters we haven't been able to fill them. We will fill them for 8 pay periods between now and September 30th, but that still will not absorb the total huge amount of lapses.
Where in your budget is the public service announcements that you make?
It's the law. That's in the, where is it located? It's in the Consumer Protection Division.
I was trying to figure out where that went.
Okay.
And your consumer advocate is not an attorney, is that correct?
Our consumer advocate is Bernie Alvarez. She's been there since I was there 25 years ago. Fred, 36 years.